They say a soldier never stops fighting, but sometimes the hardest battles aren't on foreign soil. Sometimes they happen right here, in the very streets you swore to protect. Marcus Hill had survived war zones, carried brothers through gunfire, and stared death in the face without flinching. But nothing prepared him for the sting of being called a liar in his own country, by a man wearing the very badge that was supposed to honor men like him. The night was quiet. Marcus was driving home from a late shift at the Veterans Center, the same place where he counseled young soldiers trying to rebuild their lives after service. He wore a simple jacket, his military tags resting against his chest, though no one could see them. To the world, he was just another black man driving down an empty street. That's when the blue lights lit up behind him. Marcus pulled over, calm and collected, like he'd been trained his whole life to stay under pressure. He lowered the window, hands steady on the wheel, as Officer Kane approached with the swagger of a man already convinced of guilt. "License and registration," Kane barked, his flashlight stabbing through the window. "Yes, officer," Marcus said respectfully, handing over the documents. But Kane wasn't looking at the paperwork. His eyes lingered, narrowing. "Where'd you get this car?" he asked sharply. "It's mine," Marcus replied, his voice steady. Kane snorted. "Sure it is. You think I haven't seen this before? A nice car like this out here at night? Save it." Marcus inhaled slowly, reminding himself of every drill, every lesson in patience. "Officer, with respect, I served this country. I've earned everything I own." Kane laughed bitterly, stepping closer. "Served? Don't play games with me. You don't look like a soldier, you look like a liar." The word stung deeper than Kane could ever know. Marcus had bled for his country, buried friends who never made it home, and carried scars that would never fade. And here he was, being stripped of his dignity with a single word: liar. The neighbors on the block began peeking through their curtains. A few stepped outside, phones raised, recording. They could feel the tension building. "Step out of the vehicle," Kane ordered. His hand hovered near his holster, the threat heavy in the air. Marcus obeyed, slow and deliberate. He stood tall under the harsh beam of the flashlight. "Officer, I've given you respect. I'm asking for the same," Kane sneered, circling him. "Respect? Respect is earned. And from where I'm standing, you haven't earned a thing." The insult hit like shrapnel. Marcus clenched his jaw, but he didn't raise his voice. He didn't fight back. Instead, he reached slowly into his jacket, his movements steady and deliberate. Kane's hand went straight to his gun. "Don't you move. I'm not armed," Marcus said firmly, his voice calm, though the crowd could hear the weight behind it. "I just want to show you something." His hand emerged, not with a weapon but with a small velvet case, the kind that carried honor heavier than gold. He opened it in the beam of the flashlight. The Medal of Honor gleamed in the night. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The medal, America's highest award for valor, rested in Marcus's hand, proof of the sacrifices Kane had just dismissed. Kane froze, his bravado collapsing. His mouth opened, but no words came out. The arrogance in his eyes faltered, replaced by something he couldn't disguise: fear. Marcus's voice cut through the silence, low and sharp. "This medal was pinned on me by the President of the United States. It was earned on a battlefield where bullets flew and blood was shed. Men better than me died wearing the same uniform. And tonight, you had the audacity to call me a liar." The crowd erupted in murmurs. Phones zoomed closer. Every second was being captured, every word etched into the memory of witnesses. Kane stumbled backward, his authority slipping away with every heartbeat. I didn't know." "That's the problem," Marcus interrupted, stepping closer now. His presence was commanding, his voice unwavering. "You didn't care to know. You saw my skin before you saw the man. You judged me before you heard me. And that is why people like me fight battles even when the war is over." The silence was deafening. The weight of truth pressed down harder than any weapon ever could. Kane's hand slipped from his holster. His arrogance dissolved under the eyes of the community, under the lens of every recording phone. He was no longer in control. Marcus was. Marcus closed the metal case with deliberate care, sliding it back into his jacket. "You wanted to see proof of who I am? Now you've seen it. The question is, what does this say about who you are?" Kane swallowed hard, unable to answer. The neighbors' whispers grew louder, bolder. "He's the hero, not the cop." This is going viral. The predator had become the prey. Marcus stepped back toward his car, his dignity intact, his head high. But just as he reached for the door handle, a new sound cut through the tension. A second squad car pulled up, tires screeching. Two officers stepped out, their faces grim, their eyes locked on Marcus. One of them carried a folder tucked under his arm. "Marcus Hill?" the taller officer called. Marcus turned slowly. "Yes." The officer held up the folder. "We need to talk. There's been a development and it involves your name." The crowd fell into a hush. Kane looked confused, almost relieved. Marcus's brow furrowed. A chill ran through him. This wasn't just about prejudice anymore. Someone, somewhere, had put his name in the middle of something bigger. And as the taller officer stepped closer, the words that followed would shatter everything Marcus thought he knew. If you're really enjoying this story, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification button so you never miss my latest uploads. Now, let's get back into it. The crowd held its breath as the second squad car door slammed shut. The taller officer, holding the folder, stepped toward Marcus. His expression was unreadable. "Mr. Hill," he said carefully, "we need you to come with us. There's been a report, a serious one. Your name came up." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "What report?" The officer opened the folder. Inside were copies of documents, bank statements, signatures, and contracts, all tied to Marcus's name. "You've been accused of fraud." The crowd gasped. Phones shook as people zoomed in, whispering furiously. Kane, who just minutes ago had been humiliated, smirked, as if the universe had just handed him a second chance. Marcus clenched his jaw. "That's impossible. I don't know where those came from, but they aren't mine." Kane couldn't resist. He stepped forward, a smirk plastered on his face. "See? I knew you were a liar. Metal or not, you can't hide forever." But Marcus didn't flinch. He looked Kane dead in the eye, calm, unshaken. "The difference between you and me, officer, is that I've fought for truth my whole life. And I know one thing about lies. They always collapse." The taller officer frowned. "Mr. Hill, do you have anything that can disprove this right now?" Marcus reached into his wallet. "Check the dates on those documents. While those signatures were supposedly being written," he handed over his military records. "I was overseas, on the battlefield, with an entire unit that can vouch for me." The officer flipped through the folder, comparing dates. His eyes widened. The so-called fraudulent contracts were signed while Marcus had been deployed, thousands of miles away. The crowd erupted. Some cheered, others shouted at Kane. "You set him up! How could you?" Kane's face turned red. "This doesn't prove anything." But Marcus wasn't done. Slowly, he pulled out his phone and tapped a button. A recording played through the speakers, loud enough for everyone to hear. It was Kane's voice, recorded from earlier. "If Carter thinks he's staying CEO, he's dead wrong. I'll bury him before I ever take orders from him." The crowd froze. Kane's smirk vanished. His own arrogance had turned into a weapon against him. Marcus's voice rang clear, cutting through the chaos. "You tried to bury me in lies, Kane. You forged documents, tried to turn my honor into shame. But truth doesn't break. It shines. And tonight, the world sees exactly who you are." The taller officer snapped the folder shut. His gaze hardened on Kane. "Officer Kane, you're under investigation for falsifying evidence and abuse of authority. Hand over your badge." The silence was deafening. Kane's hand shook as he unclipped the badge from his chest, the symbol of his power slipping away forever. The crowd cheered, some even chanting Marcus's name. Kane tried one last protest. "This isn't over." But Marcus stepped forward, his voice calm yet thunderous. "No, Kane, it is over. You mistook prejudice for power. But real power comes from honor. And that's something you'll never understand." The officers escorted Kane to the squad car, his head hanging low. The predator had become the prey, and justice had been witnessed by all. Marcus stood tall, the medal of honor still heavy against his chest. The crowd applauded, not just for the medal, but for the man who had carried himself with dignity when others tried to strip it away. Later, as the street grew quiet, Marcus looked out over the neighborhood. His voice was low, almost to himself. I fought for this country once with weapons. Tonight I fought with the truth, and truth now will always win. Life lesson. Power built on lies will always crumble, but integrity will always stand. Even in the face of hate, truth has the final word. If you were Marcus, would you have exposed Cain right away, or waited for him to trap himself? Comment your answer below, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories just like this one.